Hello children, hope you have learned very well question answers of chapter 1. Today we will understand poem 1 of Beehive. Poem 1 is The Road Not Taken written by Robert Frost. Let's know a bit of the poet. Robert Frost was an American poet who depicted realistic New England life through language and situations familiar to the common man. He wrote simply but insightfully about common ordinary experiences. He won 4 Pulitzer Prizes for his work and spoke at John F. Kennedy's 1961 inauguration. His famous works include Fire and Ice, Mending Wall, Bridges, Out, etc. His poem, The Road Not Taken, is often read at graduation ceremonies across the United States. Let's Frost was honored frequently during his lifetime. Is the only poet to receive 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry. He became one of America's rare public literary figures, almost an artistic institution. Let's know more about the poem. Written in 1915 in England, The Road Not Taken is one of Robert Frost and the world's most well-known poem. It was written as a joke for a friend, the poet Edward Thomas. When they went walking together, Thomas was chronically indecisive about which road they ought to take, and in review often shed tears for taking the other one. Thomas had read the poem to an audience of college students and that it had been taken pretty seriously. Frost creates a multiplicity of meanings, never quite allowing one to replace the other, even as The Road Not Taken describes how choice is inevitable. The Road Not Taken is an ambiguous poem that allows the reader to think about choices in life, whether to go with the mainstream or go to alone. If life is a journey, this poem highlights these times in life when a decision has to be made. Which way will you go? Central idea of the poem. This poem is about making choices in life and the choices that shape our future. Many alternatives are available at the time of choice, but man has to select one. It is only the future that will reveal whether the decision taken is wrong or not. After taking decisions, we cannot undo them. We can only regret them. Even if we wish, we cannot start all over again. So, taking the right decision and making correct choices is very crucial to an individual's life. Any wrong decision or choice can spoil our life. Let's start an explanation of the poem. Here I have given a text. 4 stanzas are there and it's paraphrased line to line for your reference. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, I could not travel both. And me, one traveller, long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. The speaker here is walking through a forest whose leaves have turned yellow in autumn, comes to a diversion of a road. The speaker, regretting that he or she is unable to travel by both roads, since he or she is after all just one person, stands at the diversion of the road for a long time and tries to see where one of the path leads. However, the speaker can't see very far because the forest is straight and the road is not straight. The poem begins with a dilemma, as many fairy tales do. In his description of the trees, Frost uses one detail, the yellow leaves, and make it symbolic for the entire forest. Defining the wood here, Frost points out the main idea of the poem. It instructs us that a single decision can transform a life. The yellow leaves also evoke a sense of change, that one season will soon give way to another. The poet wishes here to travel both the paths at once without changing or dividing the self. After looking down one road as far as he can see, the poet or speaker here chooses to take the other one. Stanza 2. Then took the other just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had warned them really about the same. The speaker takes the other path, judging it to be just as good as choice as the first, and supposing that it may even be the better option to the two. Since it is grassy and looks less worn than the other path, though now that the speaker has actually walked on the second road, he or she thinks that in reality the two roads must have been more or less equally worn in. Later in this poem, the speaker calls the road he chose less traveled, and it thus initially strikes him as slightly grassier, slightly less trafficked. After traveling through the road, he found both the roads are equally untraveled, carpeted with newly fallen yellow leaves. Stanza 3. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads to on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. Reinforcing the statement, the speaker calls that both roads were covered in leaves which had not been turned black by foot traffic. The speaker exclaims that he or she is in fact just saving the first road and will travel it at a later date, but then immediately contradicts him on herself with the acknowledgement of that in life, one road tends to lead onwards to another. So it is therefore unlikely that he or she will ever actually get a chance to return to the first road. Here the poet found both the paths looking same. Perhaps he or she goes in the flashback. It was tough for him to recognize the real road, as in the morning he was the first person to walk on the road. He could not decide the right path as no step had smashed the leaves on the road to allow him to go for the right one. The poet here saves the first road to another day. He knows how way leads to another and then another until you end up very far from where you started. The poet here saves the first road for another day, but in the third stanza, he does not think he will ever be able to come back and take the other path. Stanza 4. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. The speaker imagines him or herself in the distant future, recounting with a sigh the story of making and choice of which road to take, speaking as though looking back on his or her life from the future. The speaker states that he or she was faced with a choice between two roads and chose to take the road that was less traveled, and the consequences of that decision have made all the difference in his or her life. I shall be telling this with a sigh. This line means here the speaker's failure in choosing the right path. The poet accepts that the fact that he is a failure taking the right decision. He chose the less traveled one. That made difference in his or her life means that made him successful, or the speaker faced complete failure. Children, after each and every text and paraphrase, I have given stanza wise difficult meanings that you need to write in your notebook, as well as here I have given textual exercises, question answers with introduction. Please copy in your notebook and learn it for your upcoming taste and exams. Thank you.